welcome you watching this episode of Gautrain While It Matters. I am Gautrain. Now, as an example of a successful how you run a public-private partnership infrastructure project, probably the Gautrain is the best PPP South Africa has seen since the dawn of democracy a quarter of a century ago. So as Gauteng's economic success attracts millions more migrant workers, the key question has to be how to replicate its success, or better still, how to use it to solve the seemingly intractable transport crisis the country's economic hub faces in the years ahead. We welcome into our studio today, virtually of course, the Gauteng member of the Executive Council for Public Transport and Road Infrastructure, MEC Mamabolo. MEC, thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Well, good afternoon to you, to all the viewers, and thanks very much for the opportunity.
Transport, of course, is in the eye of the needle, as it were, because we have seen how it has become contested space because of the COVID crisis, with the furore around the public taxis being allowed to load 100%. But we have to think outside of where we are at the moment, MEC, and you have been certainly thinking about it. You have been talking about smart mobility as a solution. I want us first to take this notion of smart mobility and what it is. You define it as smart mobility, an innovative way of getting around. It is the use of various transport models that are smarter, cleaner, safer, and integrated. Very nice words. MEC, explain them to me, an ordinary guy who uses a taxi to go to work.
Well, I must thank you for a very precise and good articulation of the definition of smart mobility. And I must also say that right in our province, Gautrain provides us with a very good example, a real concrete example of what the concept of smart mobility mean in real terms. And that's two things. First, I must also just say to you and to the listener, to the viewers, that I'm deeply delighted that the provincial government has also adopted the concept of smart mobility as the contribution by public transport to grow the Gauteng economy. So that's a very important matter. It means it's now policy. But when you look at the example of Gautrain, it does two things. The first one is that it must make an impact on growing the economy. And then the second thing is that it must make the movement of commuters efficient and effective. If you look at growth of the economy, just if you were to say, Gauteng province without the investments brought on it by Gautrain, post the gold period, post gold mining, I'm quite sure that in the areas where Gautrain move, and actually the bigger part of Gauteng, we could be sitting with almost ghost towns, because Gautrain, the rail line of Gautrain, has brought massive investments along the areas where it is running, but also it gives us smart mobility because it makes the movement of commuters quite efficient in terms of time. It is very comfortable. It uses smart technologies. When you look at just the card that it uses now, you can use your credit card, you can use your debit card, which means we're now even setting aside the Gautrain card itself. So that principle of smart mobility embedded in growing the economy, which Gautrain does, and of course giving comfort to passengers, to commuters, and now even under COVID-19, make sure that they are and feel safe in their movement. So those are really, in brief, the core principles of what Gauteng is as a living example of the concept of smart mobility. So we didn't get it from far. We benchmarked with Gautrain, we looked at what it does, and we built those principles.
Absolutely. So, MEC, I wanted to ask you two quick questions around the Gautrain. Number one, the sustainability of the model in the age of COVID, because we all know, of course, now you can't load these trains as we were able to do in the past because of the requirements for physical distancing. And then secondly, the sustainability of the fee that you can charge when you are unable to load at full capacity. Will that change your thinking, one, around smart mobility, and secondly, around making sure that the Gautrain itself is sustainable? By the way, I am a disciple of the Gautrain. I love it, and I don't think there's been anything greater that's been done within the Gauteng province since 1994.
So very much important is that Gautrain give us sustainability as well, and I like this point you're raising, which is quite critical. If you just look at its impact on reducing congestion, not only just across public transport,
Yes,
freeing the road, but also making a contribution in reducing pollution, but also itself when we expand into the townships, when we expand in other parts of the province, greener solutions, solutions that ensure sustainability, but also just in terms of the point you are raising, how it deals with COVID-19, I can assure you that most of the things that we do in public transport in our province have been benchmarked and tested by Gautrain itself.
sure.
Just when you look at sustainability in terms of economic growth itself, I can tell you the opportunities around the Gautrain line where it is existing, not even talking about where it's going. They are quite huge. So Gautrain give you sustainability, green solutions, but also just itself, I can assure you, it is one mode of transport that will come out very strong out of the challenges imposed by the current COVID-19.
Do you see a future MEC where the Gautrain system itself will be self-funding?
The Gautrain model will be self-funding, and there are, of course, the arrangements currently, the model has been designed in such a way that, number one, and very important, government will sit with an asset. I can give an example with the buses that we subsidize.
Yes.
After the contract ends, we sit with nothing. We have absolutely nothing. With Gautrain, we will sit with an asset. And once you have got an asset, you are able to use it to leverage even much more funding, partnership. And also, I'm quite sure the finance markets would like to also engage you because you're sitting with a tangible concrete asset that's yours.
Yeah.
Secondly, the financing model of Gautrain currently, as you know, it has been embraced and endorsed as part of the high impact, easy to do type of investments in the infrastructure that the President of the Republic has spoken about. It is one top high impact infrastructure investment in the portfolio or in the infrastructure book of the President. So that itself tells you from an investment point of view, from an asset base, from just how government look at it and its positive impact as one of the things that will grow our economy. The financing models and options, I can assure you, are such that we are going to sit with a self-financing asset, and this might actually, in many respects, really be for the first time in public transport that we make investments that sits in our balance sheet, and that is a leverage even for much more better funding moving forward.
Yeah. Let me see, how are you going to integrate that model that you are talking about now, where you have a self-financing Gauteng system with the existing taxi system? And I know this is a conversation that you have been having and you have been talking about, and we all know it is a conversation at a very critical juncture, given the conflict that we saw when the taxi buses were forced to shut down for a few weeks, and then the other restrictions that came along as the government was reopening up the economy.
You know, part of the reason why I'm really deeply excited about Gautrain as a rail system is because it offers us the opportunity for integration. In this province, public transport integration based on best practice from Gautrain, including the GMA as a governance institution. We now, as you know, Mr. van der Merwe, Jack van der Merwe is now setting up the Gauteng Transport Authority.
Yes.
That its core mandate is precisely integration of public transport. When we look at, let's talk technology. Gautrain has got technological capabilities for integration through a smart e-ticketing system for the commuters.
Yes.
That is in place. I mean, as I was saying, when you just look at the transition from the Gautrain card to the debit card and to the credit card, that means with taxis, with buses, with the Gautrain midi buses themselves, we are already on a path of integration because the Gautrain card has got interoperability capabilities. And secondly, when we talk about accessibility of transport, convenience to commuters, in the sense that you are able to get into Gautrain, you can use a bus, you can use a taxi or midi buses, you can even order a taxi. The other thing is the use of smart technologies. So to that extent, what I'm saying to you is when we talk about integration of public transport, some people might be thinking that we're talking about a long-term dream. The capabilities are there. We must just step into them in Gautrain.
MEC, what will the future look like? I am trying to see here the possibility, as you say, you are integrating the Gautrain system with the existing transport infrastructure that we have in the form of minibus taxis. Do you potentially see a future in which I can alight from a Gautrain station, from a train, into a bus, into a taxi that takes me home?
Yeah, let me say the following quick and fast to answer your question. So what are the 5 things that we mean practically for the commuter by integration and what Gautrain is already offering? We are sure, we can guarantee you, faster mobility, quick and fast, reaching your destination in time. We can assure you that with public transport integration, you will have accessibility to the public transport system in its diverse form. Thirdly, very convenient. People want to be able to have a seamless trip across the province, move from one mode to the other in a seamlessly integrated way with systems that talk to each other. You'll have that convenience to the community. We are giving you automation. We are now living in a world in which COVID-19 has clearly demonstrated that data-centric smart technologies are a way forward. You have that with Gautrain, and that's number 4. The last most important thing that you'll have is green solutions. Remember, all of us are concerned and should be concerned, and all are, about the reducing greenhouse gas emissions and making sure that every public transport gives us green solutions, clean solutions, or cleaner public transport. With those 5 things, I can tell you, integration gives you that. And as I already said, and I want to emphasize this matter, the capabilities, the experience is there, and the skills are there. We don't have to travel to Asia. We don't have to go to Europe. We don't have to go to the US. The capabilities are right here, including clean governance. Clean governance we already have. I mean, GMA is one of the best managed public entities, good governance, good principles. So that's what I can assure you is the future, and that's where we go into, whilst and most importantly, growing the economy.
And one of the things that you talk about is the use of the current meter taxis as part of the transport infrastructure that you are building going forward. I read here that you are starting a 3rd feeder service which will serve the core rail service similar to Uber, wherein you are integrating these guys. How will that work, MEC? Are you entering the private taxi industry? How is it going to look like?
Let me start by saying to you that Gautrain has actually set a very good example of how to work with other modes of transport, particularly and currently the taxi industry. We have observed that Uber and the meter taxis are a feeder system into Gautrain.
Yes.
And we have also looked at the tensions and the difficulties there. And we have all agreed that we need to bring in Uber and the meter taxi into the Gautrain space in such a way that it enhances one of the principles I've already talked about of convenience, accessibility, integration. On the eve of the lockdown, we were planning to convene a summit and conversations with the meter taxis and Uber, and to harmonize their systems into Gautrain. There are give and takes. Security of our commuters is important. And I can assure you, it is just the alert levels and the lockdowns that we need to actually downgrade so that we can be able to efficiently and effectively bring a meter taxi, Uber into the benefits of Gautrain. And I can tell you that is also a model of economic development, of economic empowerment, and is going to make sure that we bring peace, stability, security, safety, and convenience to commuters in Gauteng. So the future is great, it's quite exciting, and I think commuters can be rest assured that the public transport in the province, based on the backbone of the experiences and the best practice of Gautrain, is going to make transport in our province, public transport in the province, the best.
Yeah, so you are saying you are not going to seek to compete with the e-hailing service providers, but you are going to facilitate the growth of the meter taxi industry as we know it at the moment. Am I understanding you correctly, MEC?
You're absolutely correct, because it is not necessary to create competition between and amongst systems and modes of transport that are supposed to complement and support each other. We have seen that with the taxi industry, when I can give you an example, when there was once a problem, the taxi industry came in to support Gautrain. So we have got best lessons and practices we have seen that let's negotiate a better arrangement that will bring in Uber, meter taxi into Gautrain. They all stand to benefit optimally when they work with Gautrain, work together with us, minimize tensions, make sure that our commuters can walk free in and out of Gautrain stations without having to look at their bags, without having to be worried about potential tensions. We are also going to automate that space into a precinct, into a security precinct. So what we are trying to do with this negotiation with meter taxis, with Uber, with Gautrain, is that we also want to do a security precinct within which a particular radius, every commuter walking in their private vehicle will just feel safe and will feel good to walk and to go to wherever they're going to. So we are looking, it's not just narrowly bringing in meter taxi and Uber. We're looking at also expanding the security precinct in which they operate so that everybody feels safe.
Absolutely. I can tell you that when I walk out of the Gautrain here in Sandton down to the Alexander Forbes building, you're looking over your shoulder and you're wondering who's watching you. Are they opposed to where you are going or not? Before you go, MEC, I wanted to talk timelines. You said you are just waiting for the levels to come down before you strike out. But in terms of a plan and the things that you have spoken about here, what are we looking at?
Well, in terms of timelines, I must say, before the lockdown, we were about to hold to take the first step. But with the lockdown, it has pushed us back a little bit. Now we are seeing that sectors of the economy are coming back in much more bigger scale. So I can assure you that just in August, September, we would have tightened up some of the things we needed to do. The critical aspect is going to be consultation, particularly with the meter taxis. And we wanted to consult them directly, not because given the nature of that sector, direct communication would have been better. But let me say to you that in August, we will start to explore best methods of consulting them in such a way that they will feel there's been consultation. So I'm saying to you by August, September, let's see if we can table and we'll make an announcement. Let me put it that way. By end of September, we'll make a concrete announcement on Uber, Gautrain, security precinct, and how that is going to work together. So before the end of the year, we will have given commuters a good Christmas gift of a much more safer, no looking above your shoulders, your bag, when you walk around. Bag as in your physical bag, but also your bags that you carry.
True.
So we will give people that type of security that you walk and just feel that you're walking in the safest place on earth. And that's what we will be doing. September announcement, December, I think we would have moved somewhere close to that.
Specific targets. MEC, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and we'll certainly be watching that space without a shred of doubt. The member of the Executive Council for Public Transport and Road Infrastructure in Gauteng, MEC Mamabolo, thank you for joining us this afternoon, and that's our program for today. Thank you for watching. Until next time, goodbye.